Hey everyone, ELD here with a story that I don't think I've ever told online before. This is the story of the end of what I would consider my competitive era when I was trying to become the #1 vintage player in the world. I was playing a ton of Magic at the time, probably, I would say on average, 6 events a week. It was really a unique time in my life where I was traveling all over the Northeast, playing locally constantly, and then traveling, to Europe for major events. And there's a clear line in my mind when that era ended. And that's when I started to value trading for cards more than winning cards. And this is how it went down. I was reminded of this recently because we had an event here at Time Vault Games where somebody split after going undefeated in the Swiss rounds and still split in the elimination rounds, which was like incredibly charitable. And I thought to myself, I've never been that nice. I'm still not that nice. But this was the point where I came a little bit nicer. So my opponent playing Oath of Druids, and back then it was called a Golden Gun variant of Oath of Druids. It used Blightsteel Colossus to one-shot people. So typically your opponent's creature would only have 1 toughness, trample over, do 10 damage, GG, with Infect. It was a new toy everybody was excited to play with, and my opponent passed priority during his upkeep. I passed back, and then he went into the tank. Now, at this point, he really just needs to Oath. Like, we both pass priority, but he decides, after a little bit, that he actually wants to Vamp Tutor. And the card that he would obviously Vamp Tutor for in this situation is Dragon's Breath. The way that the deck worked is sometimes you would hit this enchantment before your creature, which would give you haste and actually just kill them right on the spot. Now, it was at best a 50-50, I think. I'm not quite sure what the configuration was, but it was far from certain, at the very least, that he was going to hit his Dragon's Breath before hitting his robot. So it's basically the difference between guaranteed death and having a shot to continue. Now, it was far from over if I got a turn. I basically had 3 lands in play with a Jace in hand, and things were going to need to be fairly complicated. If I got Jace down and he doesn't have haste, I can bounce his guys, but if he does, I'm potentially dead unless I can get toughness on board. So there's all sorts of ways that the game could go, but it was vintage. Crazy things happen. And at that point, I thought to myself about the likelihood of winning the game versus how this would affect my opponent and how he would kind of think about our interactions moving forward. And I thought to myself, you know what? If this guy goes to sell out his power someday and he doesn't come to me, maybe there's something that I could have done better. Maybe I could have interacted with him in a way that made him feel better about the experience without, throwing games. I'm not there to, just not win. But in a situation like that, some people would consider that sportsmanlike to let your opponent back up, even though they did gain information and know that you're not going to say lightning bolt your creature in response to the trigger. That was just kind of the end of the era. I let it go. I let my 5% chance, my 10% chance, whatever small chance I had to win that game, which I would normally hold on to. And it was one of my favorite things in Magic, is finding those like really niche little corners of games that everybody else would just throw in the towel, and I would find a way to win. Even if it's unlikely, still just figure out your outs and try and get there. And instead, I let him go in that instance. And with it, that era of my life.